You know, deep in the history of ancient Greece, there's this incredible story of courage, love, and sacrifice that's been almost completely erased from the history books. It's the story of a legendary fighting force, an army whose bonds were forged not just in duty, but in pure devotion.
So, could an army of 300 lovers really defeat an empire? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a myth, doesn't it? But believe it or not, for one brief, shining moment back in the 4th century BCE, this was absolutely real. So let's dive in and uncover the incredible story of the Sacred Band of Thebes.
All right, so let's set the scene. The year is 379 BCE. You've got Thebes, this total underdog city-state, struggling for its very freedom against the mighty Spartan Empire. To fight back, the Thebans came up with something radical, a kind of secret weapon that was about to change the entire course of Greek history. And this was it, the Sacred Band. 300 of Thebes' absolute finest soldiers, organized into 150 pairs of male lovers. You had the Aristai, the older, more experienced soldier, fighting right beside his younger beloved, the Aramenoi. Now, in ancient Greece, these relationships were often a form of mentorship. The Thebans had this revolutionary idea. They believed this powerful bond would mean no man would ever show cowardice or abandon his partner in the heat of battle. And this wasn't just some clever military tactic they cooked up, It was actually deeply rooted in philosophy. The philosopher Plato, that Plato, was writing about this exact idea around the same time the band was formed. In his famous work, The Symposium, he argued that a deep, erotic love could inspire people to achieve incredible feats of courage. So Thebes, they were literally putting that philosophy to the ultimate test on the battlefield. Leading this whole charge were two pretty remarkable men. First, you've got Pelopidas, the fiery, passionate commander who led the Sacred Band right from the front lines. Then there's his partner, Epaminondas, who was a brilliant strategist and a real political visionary. And get this, these weren't kings or tyrants. They were progressives, democratically elected for one-year terms, and they were fighting for the freedom of their city. So you have to understand, this was way more than just a battle between two cities. It was a fundamental clash of ideologies, a struggle between two completely opposite ways of life. Just look at the matchup. On one side, you've got democratic Thebes with its elected leaders. On the other, authoritarian Sparta, ruled by a king who inherited his throne and whose entire society was built on the brutal oppression of a massive slave class known as the Helots. This was, no exaggeration, a battle for the very soul of Greece. Okay, so you might be wondering, if this story is so epic, why isn't it as famous as, say, the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae? Well, the answer really boils down to historical bias. You know that old saying, history is written by the victors? In this case, it was written by the victors' friends. See, our main historical source for this whole period is a writer named Xenophon. And to put it mildly, this guy was a huge Sparta fanboy. He was an Athenian, but he was exiled and lived in Sparta. He even sent his own kids to their hardcore military boot camps. So when he wrote his history, he systematically downplayed everything Thebes accomplished and basically ignored the heroism of the Sacred Band. He just swept their whole incredible story right under the rug. But you can't keep a story this good buried forever. And in the year 371 BCE, the Sacred Band was about to do something so dramatic, so impossible, that no historian, no matter how biased, could ever fully erase it. They were about to face the legendary, supposedly invincible Spartan army, head-on in an open field. This is the Battle of Leuctra. The Theban general, the genius Epaminondas, unveils this totally revolutionary strategy. He massed his troops on one flank, with the Sacred Band right at the tip of the spear, and just charged. The Spartans had never seen anything like it. It was completely unexpected. Their lines just shattered. For the first time in living memory, a full Spartan army was crushed in a head-on battle. The entire Greek world was just stunned. And Epaminondas didn't stop there. Following the victory, he marched his army deep into Spartan territory and did the absolute unthinkable. He freed the Helots. Remember them? The slave class that Sparta's entire society and military machine depended on? With that one single act, he didn't just defeat Sparta, he broke its power. Forever. So now, Thebes is the top dog in Greece. They're the dominant power. But here comes the tragic irony. The very source of their strength, their military genius, was about to plant the seeds of their own destruction. You see, during this Theban Golden Age, there was a young royal hostage living in the city. a kid named Philip from a place called Macedon. And for years, all he did was watch and learn. He studied Epaminondas' tactics. He saw the power of the Sacred Band up close. And when he finally got to go home, he took everything he learned and used it to build a whole new kind of army, transforming Macedon from some backwater kingdom into a terrifying new superpower.
Fast forward a few decades. The great heroes Pelopidas and Epaminondas are long gone. And now we're at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE. The aging veterans of the Sacred Band find themselves staring across the battlefield at the very war machine they had unknowingly inspired.
It was a classic case of the student surpassing the master. Philip's new professional Macedonian army was simply unstoppable. In one final, desperate stand, the Sacred Band was surrounded and completely wiped out. And the cavalry charge that delivered that final crushing blow, it was led by Philip's own teenage son, a kid you might have heard of, Alexander the Great.
254. That number is important. Because years later, when archaeologists were digging at that same battlefield, Chaeronea, they found a mass grave. And inside, 254 male skeletons, laid out in perfect rows, exactly as they had fallen in formation. This is believed to be the final resting place of the Sacred Band.
So their whole story, when you look at it, is this epic 40-year saga of triumph and tragedy. They're formed to fight for freedom. They pull off this stunning victory that breaks Sparta's power. And then they're annihilated at the hands of Alexander. It gets even worse. Just a few years after that battle, Thebes tried to rebel one last time. Alexander showed zero mercy. He razed the entire city to the ground, erasing the home of the legendary Sacred Band from the map. Today, if you go to Chaeronea, you'll see a magnificent marble lion. It stands watch over their grave. It's a lonely memorial, and it's not just for an army of lovers who died together. It really marks the end of an era. With their fall, the age of the free, independent Greek city-state was over. A tragic reminder, I think, that even the strongest bonds of love can be shattered by the relentless march of history.